Hello, and welcome to our third episode of Myth is All Around Us. My name is Maggie Mendenhall, and I will be your host as we explore mythic stories and characters, and then discover where these same themes are reflected in our community. Here in the Myth Cafe, we are mythologists, and we are investigating sacred narratives. Today, we are asking, how is masculinity rooted in the gods? One in particular that we will consider is the Egyptian god Osiris. Reflecting on the death and dismemberment of Osiris is one way of looking at masculinity, which raises the question, what is resurrection? What needs to be resurrected? Is it something divine? The mythologist who is with me today is Angelina Avadano, who is a PhD student of mythological studies at Pacific Graduate Institute. And in addition to her master's degree in mythological studies from Pacifica Graduate Institute, Angelina has also earned a Master of Theological Studies from Harvard Divinity School and a Master of Arts in English from Boston College. Embarking on her dissertation work in the PhD program at Pacifica, she has finally found the ideal proving ground for her research on masculinities. Angelina is exploring the relationship between divine and human representations of masculinities in an effort to reimagine how they may be interpreted in contemporary society. Angelina is currently at work on her dissertation, Masculinity Portrayed in a Sadomasochistic Terrain, Mining and Mapping the Mythic. Welcome, Angelina.
Hi.
I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. Now, before we get to Osiris, we have to start with your very interesting definition of sadomasochistic terrain.
Okay.
So if you could elaborate.
Okay, all right. Well, as you know, sadomasochism is kind of a sexy and a term that is in the news or in media today with handcuffs and whips and chains and 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
But that's not how I'm using the terminology because I feel like that's somewhat of a perversion of a dynamic that plays out that includes sexuality, potentially, but more often is about power, how power can be reversed in relationship, often in gendered relationships, male and female relationships, but not necessarily limited to those relationships. And so masculinity is a product of this culture. It is embedded in a culture surrounded by power and power dynamics. And so it cannot escape being a part of that landscape, which is why I use the terminology sadomasochistic terrain. And the potential in this terrain is not necessarily all about domination or subordination, but a transformation process. And so that is a very fertile ground for individuation, that's one way of saying it, or metamorphoses, or just acquiring a level of knowledge or sacred realization, spirituality, perhaps different ways that we have of expressing those ideas, but they all kind of revolve around awareness of divinity.
And now, so this is where Osiris comes in. So I think maybe to start, why don't you tell us at least one of the Osiris?
Well, as you know,
yeah, that's right.
When we're talking about myth, there are so many ways that it can be interpreted, and there are so many ways to tell the story. And so we have lots of different accounts of mythic stories all over, and Osiris is no exception. So there are accounts more from a perspective of Isis, who is in relationship with Osiris as his partner. But and there's also perspectives from Osiris' perspective. So taking from all of those, you can pull some pieces together. That Osiris and Isis were at the beginning of time in creation together, working together side by side in a relationship that was nurturing and equal, and produced lots of wonderful things. That's the whole a feeling of that beginning account, or one way of looking at that. Okay. And then something happens very similar to what happens in Eden. There's kind of a fall or introduction of betrayal and violence, and there's some sort of turn, right, from this perfect world, this perfect idea of relationship, to something else that happens. Okay. And that happens because Osiris has a brother, Set, and Set and Osiris get into a little tiff. There's lots of different versions of this, right? But one of the versions of this is that Osiris accidentally sleeps with his wife. Accidentally sleeps with his wife because she portrays herself as Isis. That's one way of looking at it. Okay.
The old bed trick.
Right. Yeah. So, but either way, right? Something bad happens. There's betrayal. Whether or not Osiris did it on purpose or not, we don't know, right? Okay. But we're in the realm of myth. Right. So, more importantly, is to look at how these dynamics play out. Right? So Set gets very angry, and he tricks Osiris into a sarcophagus, saying, "Oh, look at this box; it's perfect size. Why don't you get in there and see? Right? Why don't you get it and see how perfect it is, your size?" And once Osiris gets in, he binds it up, he throws it in the river. Osiris drowns; he's killed. Okay, and so Isis is grieving for her husband. She searches for him. And she finds this sarcophagus has washed up on shore in the land of the Syrian king. And this is one of the ways that Joseph Campbell tells the story. Okay. And the king finds the sarcophagus has been surrounded by a beautiful tree that has grown around this sarcophagus. And the Syrian king loves the look of the tree, wants the tree in his palace as a pillar. So the tree is in the palace. Isis constructs a plan to work in service of the queen, who is pregnant with a son. Okay, and so she is there as a nursemaid, and she takes care of the son of the king. And at this point, every night there's a ritual in which Isis places the little boy, the son of the king, into the fire to be purified for immortality. She's doing some sort of ritual. Okay. Okay. And when the queen comes in and finds her son in the fire, needless to say, the maid is going to be fired.
Yes, I would think so.
And so, but at this point, Isis goes to the king and says, "This is why I'm here. I want the body of my husband."
Oh, so Isis knows that tree is... Or it's a sarcophagus.
That's why she's there. She's being near her husband. Okay. And so at this point, she takes the body of her husband and she packs him up and she puts him on a barge on the river, on the Nile, and sails home. But at this time, she lays on top of Osiris and conceives their son. And Osiris is dead. So Isis is with child. They're in the forest. She has the body. She gives birth alone in the forest. And at this point, many different versions, right? We have all different accounts. So this is just one way of looking at it. Isis is found by Set. And Set is very angry. And he takes Osiris' body and he tears it into 14 pieces and throws them all over. And so Isis work with her son, Horus. They recover the pieces of Osiris, all except for the phallus, which cannot be found. And that's one version. Another version, right? The phallus is thrown into the sea by Set and swallowed by a fish. But there's something going on there with some identification and symbolism, right? Okay. Yeah. So that is the story of Osiris and Isis and Set and Horus. And one of the ways I look at this in a sadomasochistic terrain is not only the two different kinds of masculinity that we see playing out. We see in the beginning Osiris nurturing, working alongside the feminine, alongside the goddess Isis in this landscape of growth. They're growing crops. Okay, they're very successful in their endeavor, and at the same time, Set in his land Osiris' brother, Set in his land is consuming and killing and hunting the animals, eating all the plants, not letting the land return to, the seed return to the land and grow more crops. And his land becomes barren. So he gets upset and he looks at Osiris's land in this early time of creation, and he's jealous and he covets their land. And there is where we introduce that initial violence. And how I am describing this two sides of masculinity here is this kind of consuming and betraying and dominant masculinity, as opposed to the Osiris that is redemptive. And that's a term that I use that means working alongside, nurturing, has the potential to bring a new life and growth to the feminine.
So that's the redemptive masculinity.
Right. And that's
Okay.
also exists in that realm.
Okay.
But the other thing about the sadomasochistic terrain is that suffering becomes a big piece of this, and death and dismemberment lead to resurrection, and we see this playing out across all kinds of cultures, and stories of all kinds of gods, that there'll be a resurrection, a death and resurrection theme that plays out, a kind of a motif that we see repeated.
Okay.
And in between that time, many times, is a period of suffering, waiting, and that leads to this transformation that happens in the end. Okay. And so there's a story and there's a theme of death, descent, suffering, metamorphoses, and transformation, and the ultimate realization of some sort of sacred mood, recovering relationship, either to the divine, and in this case also we see with masculine and feminine, or sometimes it's human and divine. But it's here in the sadomasochistic terrain that wherever we see polarities, they become blended and reversed. And so this is why it's also really interesting to think about gender in the sadomasochistic terrain, because as we know, gender can't really be so easily categorized as masculine or feminine, or what do we even mean by these things when we talk about them, right? And certainly today in our culture, that's a big question and a debate that's been going on for some time. And so in this terrain, those identities are fluid. Gods change identities all the time. They can be masculine or feminine at any given time, and they can be represented as human and divine forms as well. So polarity kind of explodes in this sadomasochistic terrain.
Okay.
And played out in a sadomasochistic relationship, power dynamics can be reversed.
Because the polarity or the dualism, that's very much part of our culture.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, that's true. And that's because we're just in a mindset of dualism. And we really can't escape that. And that's why myth helps us. Because myth allows us to enter a world in which those things are not so easily identified. For instance, the Lord Shiva, who's very similar and has a similar set of stories about death and mutilation and violence, and also presents as both male and female, half female. So as you can see in this divine realm, a sadomasochistic realm, in the divine realm, we're blurring the lines between polarities.
That's true, because there's so much, even the terms that we use to refer to things, gender or energies or it's, yeah.
I think that where we can see this transformation happening is the ultimate potential of the dynamic. And also, it's important to remember that surrendering to suffering carries with it a certain impetus. And that's not to say, what becomes controversial here is to say, oh, so it's okay that people suffer, because in the end, it's all going to be better, right? And in the end, they're going to realize some sort of spiritual truth. And that's not what I'm saying. Although that can be true, the thing about the sadomasochistic terrain or the mythic realm is that oftentimes when you have two sides of the coin, both things are true. Yes, if you surrender to suffering, you may realize something. We all know when something bad happens to us, or we endure a long and hard and difficult time in our lives. Most often, more often than not, we come out on the other side and we say, "Oh, I'm so much better for that experience." At the time, you're not really feeling like that. At the time, you're feeling like, let's just get out of this pain, right? Let's just avoid the pain. But in the sadomasochistic realm, that process of surrender and acceptance allows something new to happen, something new to be born, like Horus. And yet, there is a responsibility that we have to alleviate and comfort and prevent suffering. But both things are true. And I think that's the beauty of the mythic realm.
Wow. Well, and it's definitely, there are a few other religions out there that talk about resurrection.
That's true. That's true. There are. And even, there are.
The 800-pound gorilla in the room.
But again, you'll see those similar themes happening throughout. A surrender to suffering and an ultimate realization. So it isn't really about so much a specific religion or a specific way of looking at it. But if you can see a similar theme, then what is trying to be said? What message is there for us about resurrection? And in the terms of masculinity, my hope is that the movement of feminism could be like Isis and strive for that relationship with masculinity again, like it was in the beginning. And instead of being an antagonistic relationship, that we can recover that masculinity that was redemptive, that we can support and recover and encourage that interaction. And so I think that is what this message for my theme of masculinity, the story of Osiris, has to tell us about that.
The freedom of the one is dependent on the freedom of the other.
Right, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. We both come at different. I working more from the feminine point, but the idea is that we don't want either one to dominate. To be balanced.
Right. Anywhere that there's imbalance, there's going to be a problem, or there's going to be tension, or there's going to be suffering.
Yeah.
And that's where suffering happens. Not that there's not a place for it. Because certain times the pendulum swings one way, and there's a time for that, and then the pendulum swings back, there's a time for that. But ultimately, we're trying to reach a place of wholeness, which is all about balance.
Yes, that we do agree on.
Okay.
Well, we're getting really close to the end of our time. Is there anything else that you feel we should know about Osiris or about redemptive masculinity that you don't feel you've covered yet?
Well, I just am hopeful that in your work, in the divine feminine, right?
Well, divine. I've learned that the divine feminine is my concept of divine feminine is also different than the divine because my divine feminine has Kali and it has all this strong and it's all that wanton energy as long it's not just.
Absolutely.
So that's my idea, but that is not I have been told that is not the current definition. So I'm actually kind of not using that term, but my more feminine spiral toward enlightenment, sort of calling but the idea, the balancing with the male and the female, and it's all the same. It's all the same thing. It's just different angles because it really balance is the answer.
That's right.
Yes. So we've agreed on that. And I really do thank you for taking the time because I know how crazy it is with dissertation to make time to come and talk to us. And so now that we have seen what it means a little bit of Osiris and his redemptive masculinity, I invite you to stay tuned, because after the break, we are going to discover where this theme can be found around us in Long Beach. Thank you for staying tuned to Myth is All Around Us. In the last segment, I was speaking with Angelina Avadano about redemptive masculinity. That was back when I had long hair and we were in our former location. But through the magic of television, we are now here in PadNet's new site in North Long Beach. And I'm joined today by the Executive Director of PadNet's parent organization, the Long Beach Community Action Partnership, and our own Renaissance man, poet, author, motivational speaker, businessman, community organizer, Derek J. Simpson. And thank you. And if he looks familiar to you, it is because he is also the host and executive producer of PadNet's own flagship community interest program, Long Beach Lens, which formerly was entitled PadNet Presents. Mm-hmm. And Derek has been good enough to let me turn the tables just a bit today so I can interview him for this show. So thank you, Derek.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
And we could talk about so many things.
Yes.
But what I'd like our viewers to understand now, today, is how you became part of Long Beach Community Action Partnership, your work there, and then also a little bit about what community action partnerships are in general.
Sure. Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to share. So I became executive director here 9 years ago. Mm-hmm. Members of the community knew my background, knew what I had accomplished in Long Beach and the greater Long Beach area, and said this was a job that they thought fit my skill set, but also that would be a good fit for the agency to do greater things in the community. Mm-hmm. So I took it on. It was 24 staff, $1.3 million back then. Mm-hmm. Today we're about 80 staff and about $9.4 million, so we've had great growth since mm-hmm. then. And I'm proud to say that we are highly respected both at a community level, but also at a state and national level, mm-hmm. because there's 1,100 community action agencies, and for our size, we're considered one of the most innovative.
And Community Action Partnership, that actually came out of the 1964 Equal Opportunity Act.
You did your homework there, yeah. So yes, out of the 1964 Economic Opportunity Act came Head Start, wow. Job Corps, and Community Action. Most people are more familiar with Head Start and Job Corps.
Yeah.
And many of my sister agencies actually run the Head Start programs. In fact, this agency ran Head Start before I took over, way mm-hmm. back in maybe the 70s and 80s, I think it was. But our largest program is utility assistance, mm-hmm. where we've paid about $11 million in utility bills since 2011. And we've also weatherized over 2,000 houses within our service area, which for energy, our service area is from Palos Verdes all the way up to Laverne. Okay. But our core community service block grant programs are within the city of Long Beach city limits. And for us, PadNet is one of those innovative programs, but PadNet's origin mm-hmm. came from our Leadership Academy mentoring program, or LAMP.
Which was your brainchild.
Yes, it was. I figured, when I took over, I needed to look and see what the community needed mm-hmm. In terms of community services from a nonprofit. There are, if you think about it, kids who are in school from kindergarten all the way up through 8th grade tend to have after-school programs. Mm-hmm. But once you get into high school, there's not, unless you're involved in something school-related, there aren't many options okay. for active, meaningful, safe places for teens, mm-hmm. especially low-income youth. Our agency's mission, bottom line, is to help families in poverty move to self-sustainability, either through direct programs that we offer or through programs that we support. So when I created LAMP, I thought, well, the best way out of poverty is through a quality education mm-hmm. or through skills that allow you to get a livable wage job. Mm-hmm. And so I felt that digital media arts was a great path, considering we're in the entertainment capital of the world.
That's true.
So we use music production, video production, photography and silk screening / graphics as kind of the hook to get the kids excited. And then once they got here, having content experts like Thomas Dawson of the Commodores, or Lionel Martin originally, who was a renowned music video director, and other people from photography and silk screening involved. But by the way, it's called leadership. That's the L in LAMP.
Right.
And so we focused on things like etiquette and problem solving and decision making, and leadership in the sense of how can you be a stronger professional and a more engaged citizen in this community to make it a better place to live for all of us. And so those things I'm as proud of as I am the videos and the CDs that they've created.
Yeah. And now PadNet actually grew out of LAMP.
Yes, when we had the LAMP program going, as I said, Lionel Martin helped the teens produce videos, and he would do music videos of the end of the semester projects of the music department. So it really showed the synergy of working together for the departments. And when I told my board, listen, we have a YouTube channel that the teens are producing video and quality videos, and so let's go for this public access contract and really give us a community media center that's a network that they can showcase their work, as well as create opportunities for training and for advocacy and other things that a community action agency should be doing.
Wow. Well, and also just to let everyone know that if you want more information about LBCAP, it's www.lbcap.org.
Yes.
And the phone number is 562-612-4...
216
Oh, shoot.
4600. And there we are.
Okay.
You almost had it.
I almost had it. But anyways, and also I believe at the time of this recording, there's an upcoming open house for LBCAP.
Yes, our first open house will be October the 1st.
Okay.
And, if people can't make that at 4:30 on October the 1st, and public comments will be about 5:30, then PadNet actually has open house throughout the year, maybe like quarterly or so. So there are other opportunities, but that will be our first one.
Yeah. So Long Beach, this is all there for you.
Absolutely.
Quite a bit of it.
Right. Free
You've
to
been
the
involved
community.
with. So please come down. PadNet, by the way, is www.padnet.tv.
Correct.
If you want information just on PadNet. So with that, thank you again, Derek,
My
for your
pleasure.
time, and hopefully I'll see you on a future episode of Myth is All Around Us.